Alright, so today I'm going to be doing a advanced movement tutorial for Celeste. Now, there's already an advanced movement tutorial out there on YouTube by a user named OddBod, and it's a fairly good tutorial. I suggest you check it out. I'll put a link in my description down below. But it doesn't cover all of the moves that I'm going to cover today, and in addition, I've heard a lot of people say that they can't follow his descriptions of how to do some of these moves, so I'm going to try to be a little bit more clear on how to do some of these moves to hopefully help people out. I'm also going to take a minute to cover some movement that is required for the gold strawberry, the flying gold strawberry in the first level. So I'll go into that at the end of this video. So, easiest thing to talk about first is going to be about falling, and this is fairly simple and most people probably already know it, but I'm going to mention it here. If you press down while you're falling, it will make you fall faster. Now, the only reason really to do this is if you're speed running. If you're not concerned about how quickly you get through the level, there's really very little point to this most of the time. There might be a couple of other uses for it occasionally, but mostly this is speed running. So you can see it stretches out the character and she falls a little faster. So it's pretty simple. Okay, so the next one we're going to talk about is this jumping dash. So obviously you can jump and you can dash, but you can also add these two things together. If you dash and then jump on a flat surface, you'll make her jump very quick. And once again, the only real reason for this is typically because it's a little bit faster than jumping and then dashing. But you'll usually get a little bit further by jumping and then dashing than you will by doing a jump dash. So it doesn't have a lot of practical purpose other than going fast. I do use this occasionally in Chapter 3 and I think it's Chapter 4 when you're being chased by Oshiro or when there are the rocks blowing in on you. I'll use this because if you wait until you see a rock coming at you and then use that move, it will usually time you out just perfectly so that you land on top of the rock. Also with Mr. Oshiro, if you do that move and then a forward dash, you'll usually land right on top of Mr. Oshiro as he charges at you if you do the move right as he charges. So, but there is another useful move that you can tie into this. So when Madeline dashes, her hair turns blue, and everybody knows that. Everybody realizes that. It means you don't have a dash. What you may not realize is that when she recovers, her hair turns white for a second before it goes back to being brown. And this is actually kind of important. That's her recovery phase. Now, when you dash, you can see her hair, it goes blue for just a second, and then it turns white again. And if you jump, anytime during the dash, you're gonna get that little quick jump thing. But if you actually dash while Madeline's hair is white, you will get your dash back, and you'll get the quick jump. So by doing that, and you have to have about a dash length to be able to do that, because it takes about a dash length for her hair to turn white. So you've got to have some room. But when you do that, you get an extra dash on the end. So by doing that, you can get a lot of extra distance on your jump. Let's see if I can get this. Okay. So I did the quick dash, which added my dash and jump together, and I got an extra dash while I was in the air out of it. So I was able to cover a lot more distance. So you can obviously see why that would be useful. Okay, so then the next one we're going to talk about is very similar, except that for this one, you're going to push down and diagonal. So, and then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to do a dash jump while you're pushing down and diagonal. And what you're going to get is you're going to get a very quick jump. So, this jump has better distance, and it goes faster. So you're going to go further and you're going to go faster, and you don't get as much height on the jump. So if you're trying to not hit an obstruction on the ceiling, that's nice too. Now, I don't use this very often. I'm not a speedrunner, and this is the reason why I'm not a speedrunner, because this move is the crux of speedrunning, and I'm playing on the Xbox, and the D-pad is terrible on my controller, so I play with the analog stick, and it doesn't like diagonals very much. So, if you're going to do this move, I highly suggest you either spring for a good controller like a Pro controller, or get the game on PS4 or something else where you can have a decent D-pad to use. The game is really probably a lot better with a D-pad. So, but you can get your dash back with that too if you have the dash length, and you dash when Madeline's hair turns white. A little harder to do. So you see I got it. I didn't use the dash, but... So there you go. Alright, so... Now this is used everywhere. There are a ton of uses for this. You can use this move, you can just abuse this move to get through all kinds of obstructions in the game. You can just bypass huge sections of the game. Honestly, it'll make the game a lot easier if you master this move, and it is absolutely 100% necessary if you want to learn to do speedrunning. Okay, so then the next thing is going to be... okay, how to get your dash back for those moves if you don't have room. Now, normally you need about this much space if you're going to get your dash back on one of those moves. And sometimes you don't have this much space. Sometimes you only have this much space. Okay? So there are a couple of things that you can do. If you have a situation like this, where you have a wall on one side, you can actually dash into the wall, and then if you press back away from the wall and jump when Madeline's hair turns white while you're dashing into the wall, she will actually bounce off of the wall and go the other direction and get her dash back. Okay? So if you have a wall on one side, and it doesn't have to be a tall wall. You could do it on something like this. If I were up here. And you can see I did that with the down diagonal dash so that I wouldn't go too high, because if I had gone higher, I probably would have hit the obstruction in the middle there. Actually, I missed it. But you can do it with either one, and obviously the diagonal dash gets you... It's faster and it gets you more distance. So. And that's actually... fairly easy to do. That's actually much easier to do than the dash like that. So if you have an opportunity to do that, you can make use of that. So another time that you may be able to do this, though, is maybe you don't have enough room. So like right here, okay, I don't have quite enough space to do this, to do the dash, but there's not a wall behind me. But what I can do is we have another thing we can do where we can do this diagonal down dash into the floor, like this. And if you jump when Madeline's hair turns white, right after you hit the floor, you will still get that super fast dash, and you will get your dash back for use during the jump. And I have a little more trouble doing this one. But this is, speedrunners do this all the time. So that's kind of a big one. And like I said, the place that you're going to do this is someplace where you don't have the room, but you don't have a wall behind you. So like here, I could use this to actually get to this strawberry from this direction. You're supposed to have to go around and get to that strawberry the other direction. But if I come out here... and I messed it up by... There you go. So I got to the strawberry coming from the wrong direction there. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is Madeline will always get her, she always gets her dash back when she changes between screens. And I'm sure most people have probably seen this by now, where you can use this little trick to get up to sections that you normally shouldn't be able to get up to. And that's actually required on this particular section to get this crystal heart in this level. But there are other places that you can take advantage of that as well if you keep an eye out for it. One of those places is on Chapter 3 early in the level. Okay, so you've got this key here, and normally you have to go up and jump around the little spikes to get to this key, but if you jump, dash, dash, you just go right up to that key. So you can skip a large section. And so you want to keep an eye out for things like that in the game. Places at screen change, there are often opportunities that you can use those to your advantage. Okay, so the next move that we're going to talk about, we've been talking about dash moves horizontally across the flat floor and jumping off of those dash moves. So the next thing we're going to be talking about is very similar, except now we're talking about going vertical. So this is used for making your way up in levels very quickly. And it's very similar. All you're going to do is you're going to dash up next to a wall, and then you're going to press jump while you're next to that wall. And that's going to propel you high up into the air. Now you can see if you don't do that, this is about as high as you can get. And if you do that, you can get a lot higher. Now you want to not hold the climb button while you're doing this. You can do this while you're holding the climb button, but it's harder to do and you won't get as much height out of it if you're holding the climb button. So make sure you're not holding the climb. You can also do this just from a position where you're climbing on the wall, but you have to release the climb button to do that. So let go of climb and then do your dash, and you could do that straight off of a wall grab. And like the downward dash, if you make clever use of this, this will let you get through some of the areas in the game very, very easily. You can bypass huge sections of the game in ways that weren't necessarily intended to be done like that. Now this technique shows up at the end of Chapter 7B, and then you'll need it all the way through the rest of 7B and 8B and all of the seaside levels. But if you know the technique and you keep it in mind, you can often find ways to abuse it to make the rest of the game much easier. Okay, and then the next thing, this is just kind of a minor thing. It only applies to this Chapter 2 here, and there's a couple of other levels, Chapter 7, and I know 8 on the seaside has these dream blocks. So it's when you're dashing through these dream blocks, and the game teaches you this at the very beginning of Chapter 2 B-side, so most people probably know about it, but I'll mention it for people who don't. When you dash through the dream blocks, when you come out the other side, if you press jump right as you come out the other side, it will change your trajectory and you'll get a little jump. You'll go higher and you'll go much farther coming out of the other side of the block. And this is required constantly in the Chapter B and C sides. But if you know about this, you can also make use of it in this level. In the A side to help with speedrunning. There are a couple places here. There's a place where if you can use this while dashing through this first dream block, you can get up to a higher dream block that you wouldn't be able to reach otherwise, and then from there you can go diagonally to kind of skip a little section of the map. So the point is to know about this move and keep an eye out for places where you may be able to use this to cut some time off of your speedruns. Okay, and then the next thing we'll talk about is a wall climb. And this is a little bit different because all of the moves that we've talked about so far are things that the developers obviously intended, and they're intentional game mechanics. And this one I'm not so sure that they intended for it to work this way. So now normally if I want to climb a wall, I'm just going to grab the wall and climb up, and I can only go so high because I'm going to run out of stamina very quickly while I'm climbing up the wall. So there's a limit to how high I can get on a wall like that. But using this method, you can go as high up a wall as you want, and it doesn't use any stamina. So what you're going to do is, okay, if you're pushing towards the wall and you press jump, you actually kick off the wall and you go quite a ways out from the wall. Okay? But if you don't press towards the wall when you press jump, if you just press jump without pressing on the control stick at all, you actually don't go very far out from the wall. So what this means is, as you're jumping along a wall, if you release the control stick and then press jump and then press the control stick towards the wall, you can actually make it back to the wall at a higher level than you were when you jumped. And if you just repeat this over and over, you can get as high up on the wall as you need to get, and it never uses any stamina. So, there is no place in the game where this is necessary, because like I said, I don't even think this is something that the developers intended to be in the game. This is just something that the mechanics happen to work out like that. There's no place that you have to use that, but there are some places that you might be able to bypass difficult portions of the game by just climbing up a wall like that you're not intended to be able to go up. And there are also some places in the game where you can just use it to conserve stamina to make certain things easier. And one of those places is going to be at the end of Chapter 1. And it's important to point out here that this is done when you're not climbing. So you're not holding the climb button while you do this. If you jump while you're holding the climb button, Madeline doesn't kick out off of the wall at all unless you're completely out of stamina. If you jump while you're holding climb, she'll just jump up the wall and stay right in close to the wall, and that's not what you want. Okay, so here at the end of Chapter 1, there's a couple of things that you can do. So first off, you just skip this whole section. Oops. By using this technique to climb up the wall without using up your stamina. And then you jump out. Oops. So if you're good at that, which obviously I'm not particularly good at that, you can use that to just bypass that whole section if you're doing a speed run. But then the place where this really comes in useful in this room is actually on the other side. So there's the golden boost strawberry that you get for making it all the way through this level without dashing. Now, if you can't dash, this room is kind of difficult. And what you have to do is you grab this and you let it throw you across the room, and then you're going to climb up. And you're going to try and jump up and grab the platform on the other side. But as you can see, when you do it like that, you run out of stamina on your way up the wall. So by the time you get up there, you only get one rushed attempt at grabbing that platform, and then you run out of stamina and you fall. So, if you use this method to actually jump up that wall instead of climbing up the wall, you conserve your stamina. And then you can take the time to position yourself. You can get 3 or 4 attempts at that, but you can see that was much, much easier just because I had the time to position myself for the jump. So I made it on a single attempt. Whereas normally that can take dozens and dozens of attempts to make that. So that makes that much, much easier, and you can see here, I'm not on assist mode or anything. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about spikes in the Forsaken City, and anywhere in the game where you find these spikes, this stuff always applies. But here in the Forsaken City, there are some things that you can do. There's a gold strawberry that you get at the end of this level if you can get in all the way through the level without using a dash. And to do that, there are a lot of things about spikes that you have to know. So the first thing that you need to realize about spikes is that you can cling onto the sides of anything that has spikes. So like right down here, you can cling onto the side above the spikes, right? And that becomes very important. And at the top of this, you can jump over the spikes, but in this particular place, I wouldn't be able to make the jump. So what you do is actually, if you jump first, jump up, then anytime there's spikes, there's a little hitbox just above the spike that you can land on, and that way you can get a little bit more height out of your jump. And so there are a lot of places where you'll do this jump. And by hitting that little hitbox above the spike, you can get just a little bit further so you can get over some of these obstructions. And that's fairly basic. I have a video that shows me going through and getting that without doing any jumps. And you can generally pick that up from watching the video. But there are a couple of places in the video that people have problems with, and I'm going to talk a little bit about those places here. And one of those places is right here, because this particular area, you cannot get enough distance like that to make the jump. The row of spikes is just a little bit too long. So what most people do is you're going to come out here and you're going to jump from here and try to hit that little spot on the spikes, and it's really difficult to hit it. But if you can hit it just right from that spot, then you have a little bit more momentum, and sometimes you can make it over the spikes. And it's very hard to do, but it can be done. But a lot of people have trouble with that, and so there's another way that I'm going to show you how to do this that works a little bit better for a lot of people. And for starters, what I'm going to do, and I recommend doing this for this challenge. If you're going to try this gold strawberry challenge, this is something that I highly recommend that you do. And I know you can do it on Xbox and PlayStation. I suspect there's a way to do this on Switch and on PC, but I don't know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Xbox settings, and I'm going to look for my controller, if I can find it here. Devices. Okay, and now I'm going to go into configure on this controller, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust my button mapping here. And since I'm trying to do this entire challenge without using dash, I might want to just disable the dash, right? So, so we're going to look at the X. The X is the button that I normally use for dash. So instead of the X being dash, I want the X to be my jump button. And A or Y can be used for jump. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to map the X button to Y. So that changes that. So now X and A are both jump and Y and B are both dash. And so then what that's going to do is that gives me two jump buttons that I can hit right next to each other. I can hit A or X for jump now. And there are a couple places where that is very, very beneficial in this particular challenge, and this is one of them. So if I come down here and I jump straight at this thing, but then as I hit the thing, while holding climb, you have to be holding the climb button, I'm going to hit this thing, and then I'm going to hit both jump buttons, one right after another in quick succession. And don't expect to get it on the first try. Okay, so there we go. Oops. But you can see I'm getting this a lot more often doing it this way. It's still not something where I can hit it every try. But I think this is a much easier way to do this jump. Okay, and then the very next difficult one is in the very next section. And this is the next one people really have trouble with. And what most people do is they climb up here and you get about this far, and then you try to jump up and then jump out away from the wall. And it's very, very difficult to do, and it's usually going to take dozens and dozens and dozens of tries. Okay, and it's actually not a good method to do that. There is a much better method to do this. And credit for this technique goes to one of my YouTube subscribers. It was Curtis Thiessen who actually mentioned this in the comments for one of my videos and showed this technique. So this is the same thing. You're going to map the jump button to be the A and the X button, or if you were on the PlayStation, you'd probably want it as X and square. I don't have a Switch, so I don't know how you do it on the Switch, or even if you can do it on the Switch. Obviously, PC, just however you end up doing it. But for my Xbox, I'm going to map these to A and X so that it's buttons that are right next to each other. And then what I'm going to do is, instead of climbing up and stopping halfway through, I'm going to climb all the way up to the spikes. And then I'm going to push away, and I'm going to push both buttons in quick succession like I did before. And once again, this is not something that's like you'll get it every time, but this is a much, much easier, much better way to do this. And so what I did there I push both buttons at the same time, and I release climb right as I jump. So you're going to hold on to the wall, you're going to push away from the wall, and then you're going to release the climb button and press both the jump buttons in quick succession. So I just roll my thumb across the A and X buttons as I release that jump button, and that will help you get across that relatively easy. This actually makes this one of the easier sections in the game, and normally most people consider this to be the hardest section in getting this this flying gold strawberry. Alright, so hopefully some people will get some use out of these moves. Like I said, there's more here than OddBod had in his video, so hopefully you've learned some things, and this will help you improve your game, and maybe I'll help out some speedrunners out there. So if you get famous because of my moves, give me a shout out. Good luck.